Right now, Shonen Jump is serializing a new batch of manga, the first of which has already had its first chapter, and it's called MamaYuyu. The rumors before its release had me a bit worried, it mentioning heroes and demon kings, things which bring to mind isekai, which often isn't a very inspiring thing for me, so I'll be honest and say my expectations were a little low, which is unfortunate as I like to go into every new Jump series with a lot more hope, but I can say after reading the first chapter I was very pleasantly surprised. Since this is a chapter 1 review, I'll be going through the basic plot and things I liked about this chapter. It just came out this week and it's free to read on the Shonen Jump app or Manga Plus, so go have a read before or after you watch this video if it sounds interesting to you. We start with a subversion of the usual hero demon lord trope we've come to expect, with the world being at peace and the hero and demon lord living together in a sort of parent-child dynamic. Nothing crazy, but way more welcome than a standard isekai, which I was worried it might be. We get a page of characters being interviewed, which helps build the world. It tells us what people live there and introduces us to our main character properly and his potential issues. It's pretty clever and I'm a fan of this literary device. Chainsaw Man actually used it at the beginning of its second part in chapter 103, which came to mind while reading. We then move on to explore what Corleo's deal is. Despite being a hero by his birthmark, he doesn't know what that means. The world, as said by his parental figure Mamama, has outgrown the use of heroes and demon lords. It's a time of peace now, where no one needs to fight. This sets us up for a great coming of age story, I think, where Corleo not only can discover what a hero is in our normal shonen terms, but also who he is himself. Also, depending on how the story progresses, it could embrace this idea of change and adaptation and play around with the typical heroic story and of shonen manga in general. It could comment on it, subvert it, and do all sorts of fun stuff, so I'm really excited to see what it actually does with this. We then come to our first twist. A second hero named Evan Allgreen appears from a different world, which raises a lot of questions but provides us a great inciting incident. Corleo now gets to learn what another hero is like, and with the presence of a new hero, brings with it another demon lord. So the title of hero has a purpose again in this world. Corleo chats with Evan, but he doesn't quite get the answer he wants. Evan telling him he needs to find out what a hero means for himself, which definitely pushes the idea that this is a more coming of age story about Corleo searching for his sense of self. At one point a little later on, Corleo even says he doesn't know who he even is anymore. After this we get a touching scene with Mamama where she tries to comfort him, and what she says really hit me. She apologizes very earnestly. The way the text boxes are so small and cramped, and how the panels border the center one where she tells Corleo not to wish he'd never been born, suggests a lot of intimacy, and I can imagine Mamama is speaking very quietly and gently based on how small the text is here. It's really cinematic, and we're seeing a lot more manga that do things like this lately, I think, especially with authors like Fujimoto, for example. Or perhaps I'm just noticing this more as I analyze more manga. Moving on, Demon Lord End, who is chasing after Evan, appears, and it's this grotesque beast drawn with extraordinary detail. There's a few fun things I want to point out about it. There's a cute little anime head on top of the monster, and also you can see Evan's face is reflected in its eyes on the following page, which I think is a really cool visual, and it shows that the Demon Lord is thinking about Evan, or it's focused on him, so there's definitely a strong connection there, I think. The way it speaks as well, saying Evan's name followed by a heart is really intriguing. Evan also states it got smaller, and I'm going to theorize a bit here and say that this particular entity might be some amalgamation of other people or creatures from wherever Evan is from. Perhaps when Evan lists the names of other people he knew later on in this chapter, they're characters who were consumed by this demon lord. We then get our second twist and heel turn from Evan. Him wanting to kill Corleo after dispatching Demon Lord End, as only one human and one demon should exist in one world, otherwise they'll cause rifts. We don't quite know what this means yet, but we might see what this entails in the future if more heroes or demons come to this world. The Demon Lord ends up reviving and breaks free, perhaps using Mamama's sigil or power as something happens to her. Perhaps her powers are gone now or something. We might see what happens to Mamama in the next chapter. Corleo then comes to the conclusion that a hero is someone who protects someone and ends up saving Evan's life from the Demon Lord, despite Evan just betraying him minutes earlier, with Evan then ending up healing him at the cost of his life, reiterating that a hero is someone who protects. It's a really nice beginning, but hopefully we continue to explore what the idea of a hero is throughout the story as Corleo grows, and it's not just ended here that a hero is someone who protects someone. I'd really like to see this idea of a hero explored. And then we reach the end of the chapter where we have a noticeably younger Corleo being held by Mamama. And that's the end of the first chapter. A lot of intrigue, and I think the next chapter will set up a lot more for the story to come. A lot happens overall, and there's a lot of twists and turns here. If this was a one-shot, I think it would honestly be perfect, but it also needs to stand the test of time as a series. Currently, I'm not sure where we're heading, which is both good and bad. Bad because there's no absolutely clear direction of what the story will be about, but that's not the be-all end-all, as I think it's also very engaging and exciting, which brings me to the good. I want to know what happens next. I want to read more. If the quality continues and the story finds its feet on the long term, we could have something really strong here, so I'll hold out hope. As to where I think the story might go, perhaps it'll be a reverse isekai where Corleo and Mamama have to defend the world from invading heroes and demons. I think that could work as a successful formula and spiral into all sorts of directions. What I don't really want to see is something more generic, like a demon hunter group emerging or anything stereotypical shonen like that. I'd like to think based on this chapter the author is above that, but I have no idea in reality where this story is going. Either way though, I'm really excited. Moving on, perhaps the main thing that strikes me about MamaYuyu is the art, and specifically how it panels things. So many pages have lots of small panels, sometimes reaching 10 or more, which usually is a big no-no when you're making comics from my experience. Not to say it shouldn't or can't be done, but it usually takes someone quite skilled to pull it off well in my opinion. I think it's also commonplace for a lot of battle shonen manga to have a smaller amount of panels. It's often easier to control and the larger images help convey what's going on in a clearer way. But MamaYuyu is different. Its pages are packed with smaller panels that display a lot more moment-to-moment actions, shifts in perspective and subtle emotional cues. Sound effects and text bubbles break out of the panels or carve into them seamlessly, creating a really nice kind of puzzle-ish look, which I've only really seen in Tokyo Revengers, for example. Each page is playful and full of variety, and despite the complexity of some of these pages, they're still easy to read. Some pages have these little outside of panel illustrations too, like these two pages where we see Corleo's leg at the bottom and top to simulate him walking from place to place. It's these small touches that make it even more playful and fun to read. It reminds me of Hat Atelier in some ways, with how artistic and fun it uses its pages and panel layouts. Often pages of Hat double as some of the most amazing illustrations I've seen. MamaYuyu though feels like it has some of this DNA, but it's grounded a lot more in the sequential. It feels like it's exploring and experimenting with its layout in the form of a comic and not just as art. Overall, it's an absolute delight from an artist's perspective, I think, to read. I haven't even talked about the actual artwork here even, which is phenomenal for a rookie mangaka. Yoshiyuki Hayashi is a force to be reckoned with for sure. His smaller drawings, of which there are many, are great and clear, easy to read too, which is necessary since there's so many of them. His larger drawings and panels with expressions on are brimming with detail, his Demon Lord designs being a great example of this, as well as the full page drawing of Corleo getting bisected. Just tons of detail and great uses of tone here. Overall, the artwork is stellar and really drew me in. Perhaps as an artist myself, I just saw a lot I liked there, and I think I could learn a lot from his work, to be honest. Even if I didn't like the story, I think I'd still be excited to read this week by week because of the art. Before we end, I want to touch on Yoshihiko Hayashi's other works, which so far have only been one-shots, and only one of them has been translated into English, unfortunately, which is Making a Pie in the Sky, or I ni kaita mochi wo kaita mochi, in Japanese. It was actually a contender for the last year's Golden Future Cup. See my video on the Gold Future Cup and its curse if you'd like to know more about it. It didn't win the competition though, but sometimes we do see losers from the Gold Future Cup serialize itself in the magazine before or after the winners, and this is a case of that, someone who didn't win the Gold Future Cup who is serializing their series before the actual winner. Usually this doesn't have a bearing on the curse idea, so hopefully MamaYuyu isn't retroactively cursed by the Gold Future Cup. Hayashi has clearly put a ton of work in his art style as it's changed a lot. I'm not sure if I'd say it's better or worse though, as I love how both are drawn, and you can clearly see their flair for experimenting with the panel and page layouts already in this one shot. The story of Pie in the Sky follows Sumika, who is doing her best to play trumpet when she bumps into a quirky girl who draws manga called Nako. They practice their respective passions together and form a relationship. It's dramatic and emotional, with it delving into the creative process, how hard it can be to pursue your passion, and how it feels on a personal level when you're stuck or that passion is taken away from you, quite literally in the case of this one shot. But I won't spoil too much because it's excellent and I think everyone should read it. I think it really demonstrates how good the author is at emotional storytelling. I feel a lot of love and hurt coming from them from this one shot, and I hope to see them using that in MamaYuyu to elevate it to the next level and make it even better. That's my hope anyway. Perhaps in the future I'll make a follow-up video on MamaYuyu. It might get axed or become something big, only time will tell, but I enjoyed the first chapter enough to make a video on it. Please let me know what you think about the first chapter and the one-shot Making a Pie in the Sky if you've read it too. That's also something I might revisit one day, perhaps in a video on one-shots or something like that. In the meantime, before my next upload, you can watch one of the many videos on manga and Shonen Jump I've uploaded, and please subscribe for similar content like this. And with that, thank you for watching, be kind, and take care.